Tanse Natute Magtiar Wheatley Nisigasun Opasqueacoche. Welcome to APTN National News. The RCMP continued to investigate the mass stabbings that shook the Hollow Water First Nation, a community of about 1,000 people on the east shore of Lake Winnipeg. As details are still being sorted out, a family member is speaking out, hoping to make an appeal to those currently caught up in drugs and violence. Jordan Hamilton is still processing what unfolded in Hollow Water First Nation on Thursday morning. His father, Michael Raven, was one of 8 victims stabbed and brought to a Winnipeg hospital.
Yeah, he was stabbed a couple of times in the back, punctured lung, but then when he went to the x-rays, they told him that there was no serious damage on his lung or his spine, right? So he was discharged.
Hamilton says his dad and one of his cousins were stabbed inside his dad's home by 26-year-old Tyrone Simard, who also happens to be Hamilton's second cousin.
My dad said, he came back twice. He hit him, he fought him once, and he came back the second time when he was sleeping. Kicked in the door and then stabbed my dad, right?
Hamilton says Simard stabbed the other 6 victims in 2 separate homes in Hollow Water. One of the victims was killed, Tyrone's sister, 18-year-old Marina Simard. Tyrone was killed after colliding with an RCMP cruiser on the way to the scene. The officer is expected to make a full recovery.
I can't blame the family that happened, right? I don't blame them at all for once. Stuff happens like this, drugs are crazy, they're out of hand right now.
Simard was out on bail on other charges. Court records show he was charged with assault with a weapon and mischief for alleged offenses that took place on June 8th. Records show he was released on June 12 on conditions including a curfew and an order to not use drugs or alcohol or possess weapons. He also faced charges dating back to 2017 for sexual assault, sexual interference, and invitation to sexual touching that were never proven in court. The Assembly of First Nations held their annual meeting in Winnipeg, where amongst 50 resolutions included one to get a Canada-wide state of emergency to deal with the drug alcohol crisis in First Nations as tragedies like the one in Hollow Water continue to plague communities.
And we are praying for the healing and and we want to hope for healing for all of those people affected just a few years ago on the exact same day that this same senseless act happened in a Saskatchewan community in James Smith. And I hope that those 2 communities can connect and be together. But in this moment, I ask for all of us to pray for both of those communities.
In a statement, Manitoba's Shared Health said that 4 patients remain in hospital on Friday, while the other 3, including Hamilton's dad, were discharged and taken back to Hollow Water.
I just want to put out the word out there, for everybody to be safe, and think over this, what happened, right? And start working on the community and get people going, in these programs, right? Get them sober.
Crediting programs like the one he's currently in called Magoon Transition Inc. for turning things around.
What made me want to change is when I seen what I was doing to other people's families. Me dealing this meth and all that, methamphetamine, that was my choice of drug, right? So when I noticed that, I wanted to sober up my life and get clean and go back home when my wife was ready. And now she's ready, so that we can go help our community clean up too, right?
In hopes of preventing other tragedies like this one. If you need support today, you can call the Hope for Wellness helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for counseling and crisis intervention at 1-855-242-3310 or connect to the online chat at www.hopeforwellness.ca and follow the links. The Assembly of First Nations wrapped up its annual meetings on Friday. The day's event was dominated by an emergency press conference held by the Matthias Kalom Cree Nation. The First Nation in northern Manitoba has been evacuated for more than 100 days and more challenges are beginning to show. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
At a press conference in Winnipeg on Friday morning, it was clear that Matthias Kalom Cree Nation Chief Gordy Bear is feeling the strain after being forced out of his community for more than 3 months.
We gotta get home. We gotta get home. Our children are suffering. We're suffering. We're trying to keep each other intact as leaders, as supporters.
First Nations members have been under forced evacuation since late spring due to wildfires. They now want to buy a generator for roughly $8 million, but as Manitoba Kiiwetinoong Okamakinak Grand Chief Garrison Settee says, both Ottawa and the province can't agree on who should pay for it.
They have a solution to get the power back on in their nation. They brought forth a way that they can take their people home. But no one wants to pay.
In a letter from Indigenous Services Minister Mandy Galmasti to Matthias Colomb dated September 4th, as Manitoba Hydro is the entity responsible for providing reliable power to Manitobans and for operating the customer's best interest and being responsive to their needs, the introduction of an alternative power source to alleviate the extended outages being experienced by Matthias Colomb is fundamentally a Manitoba Hydro responsibility. The letter goes on to say, I understand that Matthias Colomb Cree Nation is already engaged in discussions with Manitoba Hydro on proposed power generation installation and ongoing operation and maintenance, and Manitoba Hydro has confirmed the technical feasibility. The department has sent letters to Honourable Minister Adrian Sala, Minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro, seeking confirmation of Manitoba Hydro's intentions to fund Matthias Colomb Cree Nation's proposal. Glenn Dumas is the First Nations fire chief. He says 12 community members have passed away since the forced evacuation began, and a lot of money could have been saved by both levels of government had they provided funds for the generator weeks ago.
The government has spent over $160 million keeping the Matthias Colomb Cree Nation members in Niagara Falls, in Winnipeg, the Paw, Brandon, and wherever else they placed our people.
APTN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak was also at the press conference. She says the time for jurisdictional arguments is over, and Ottawa and Manitoba need to find a solution now.
Create that trilateral table ASAP, like today, and get it moving and figure this out. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Late in the day, Manitoba Hydro sent APTN News an emailed statement that they expect to have partial power restored to the community by September 11th and full power restored by September 28th. They also said they have been in discussions with the community about what is needed for permanent backup power generation, but were unable to comment further. APTN also reached out to Indigenous Services but did not hear back by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We now want to tell you about the results for last week's web poll questions. We asked, will hiring Indigenous relations advisors improve trust between police and Indigenous peoples? 28% said yes, 50% voted no, and the rest were unsure at 22%. Next, we asked, do you consider hydroelectricity a form of green energy? Over half voted yes at 56%, 28% said no, and 16% said they were unsure. And lastly, we asked, do you feel the Assembly of First Nations represent your community's interests? 20% said yes, 60% had said no, and 20% were unsure. Thanks to all those who took the time to vote. You can go to our website, aptnnews.ca/poll to see this week's new set of questions. Time for a quick break, but first here is Mike McDonald with what he's got in store for us.
I'm Mike McDonald reporting from Thunder Bay, the site of the Wake the Giant Music Festival. The giant we're referring to is, of course, that famous Thunder Bay landmark, the Sleeping Giant, also known as Nanabijou. The festival serves as a fundraiser for Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, which hosts Indigenous students from across Ontario, many from far north communities. I'll be bringing you stories from the festival itself, as well as orientation week at the school.
Pitigwe. 30 years ago, an Ontario Provincial Police sniper took the life of an unarmed First Nations man, Dudley George. The raid by the OPP happened at the Ipperwash Provincial Park on September 4th, 1995, when the Ojibwe community of Kettle and Stony Point were demanding the province and federal government to return the Ipperwash Provincial Park to them, after it was expropriated by the military during the Second World War. In response to public pressure, the Ontario government ordered the Ipperwash inquiry. It began in 2007, 7 years after Dudley George's death. The final report included 100 recommendations for implementation. In a press release, Anishinaabe Grand Council Chief Linda Debajji says the government continues to ignore treaty rights. She added, History has proven this as we remember the events that led to the tragic incident at Ipperwash Provincial Park. The inaction of the Government of Ontario to prevent it. We need expedited process that will ensure tragedies like Ipperwash never happen again. According to the Anishinaabe Nation, there has been little to no movement on the implementation of the recommendations. As the wildfires in the Northwest Territories continue to burn, a former Member of Parliament has called out the handling of the situation. Here's APTN video journalist Bruce De La Cruz with that story.
That's former Member of Parliament Michael McLeod, who served the federal riding of Northwest Territories for 10 years. In this video that was taken at the Hay River Evacuation Center and posted on social media on September 2nd, McLeod is seen having strong things to say to Premier R.J. Simpson on the territorial government's response to the recent wildfires.
A community is going to burn. Whether it's our community, Wati, or January, some place is going to burn, but you don't do anything until the fire is at our doorstep.
Michael McLeod, who grew up and still lives in the community of Fort Providence, continues by asking the Premier if the government is capable of handling this and future wildfires.
Will you consider turning back the responsibility for firefighting in the Northwest Territories to the federal government so they will help us? Because we live in Indigenous communities, you guys are providing us nothing to prevent fires. Nothing. Not one drop of fire retardant in my community. Not one water bomber dropped a load yet. That's an embarrassment.
APTN News attempted to contact both parties for further comment. Michael McLeod did not respond at the time of this broadcast, while R.J. Simpson emailed us a statement saying evacuees across the Northwest Territories are under immense stress right now, and the frustrations expressed by some residents of Fort Providence are understandable. Fire crews have worked relentlessly under extremely challenging conditions and managed to control or extinguish more than 100 fires this season. However, wildfire is a natural and necessary occurrence that no government can completely control. Safety must always come first, for the people in our communities and for the crews on the ground and in the air. The community of Fort Providence has been on an evacuation order since August 31st, with the nearby community of Hay River providing support. On Tuesday, September 2nd, an ignition operation to reduce threats to Fort Providence was completed, with the ignition line holding at the time of this broadcast. Bruce De La Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
The Innu Nation and the Nunatsiavut government say the Newfoundland and Labrador provincial government misrepresented Indigenous identity. At a ceremony and unveiling of artwork at the Confederation Building in St. John's that commemorated the culture and history of the Nunatukavut Community Council, or NCC. Provincial politicians and Nunatukavut leadership attended the event, where art by an NCC artist will be on display in the lobby of the Confederation Building. Premier John Hogan said in a press release that the unveiling promotes Indigenous culture. The Innu Nation and the Nunatsiavut government, which represents the Inuit of Labrador, say they do not recognize the NCC as an Indigenous governing body. In June 2024, the federal court ruled that NCC is not recognized as an Indigenous group with Section 35 rights. Johannes Lamp is the president of the Nunatsiavut government. He says the province is acting as a surrogate for a group making false claims. We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. One last break here, an interview with an up-and-coming musician from Poundmaker Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, Cheskwa. Starting on the East Coast, St. John's 23, Charlottetown 19. Kuujjuaq 10, Nain 12. Chibougamau 8, Quebec City 17. North Bay 12, Toronto 17. Kapuskasing 13, Wawa 14. Churchill 10, Thompson 17. Barons River 16, Brandon 14. North Battleford 16, Regina 16. Uranium City 9, La Ronge 19. Over to the west, High Level 25, Grande Prairie 27. Edmonton 29, Lethbridge 31. Bella Coola 16, Campbell River 20. Dease Lake 15, Smithers 13. Old Crow 13, Whitehorse 17. Norman Wells 13, Fort Simpson 24. Tuktoyaktuk 5, Colville Lake 10. Cambridge Bay 6, Chesterfield 6. Arctic Bay 0, Iqaluit 5. Tawau, welcome back. A new and upcoming musician, Love Tatus from the Poundmaker Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, is busy working on her debut album. However, she has already hit more than 100,000 streams on Spotify with her new songs Mama, Matriarch, and Relate. The Edmonton-based singer describes her sound as UK soul and grew up listening to Amy Winehouse and Juno Award-winning artist Fawn Wood. Here's Krisa Najkute with that interview with Love Tatus.
Love Tatus, thank you for speaking with us. You are currently working hard on your first big debut album, but you already hit more than 100,000 streams with your songs Mama and Matriarch and your new song Relate. Can you tell us why you wanted to pursue a career in music?
Yes, first I just want to say thank you for having me. I think the biggest thing for me was trying to find a platform of something that I could use or I could share things that I believe would help others. And through my music and through my passion of art and creativity, I found that niche for myself. I used to work with high-risk youth, and I worked different means of frontline work with mental health and stuff. And I just found that for me, carrying the same motive, using music, was the reason why I was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to send a good message through my music. So, yeah.
Spoken from the heart, and definitely some heart work there as well. And Love, can you tell us about where you're from and where you grew up and how that helped shape what you sing about? You talked about it a bit there.
Yeah, I grew up in a small reserve called Poundmaker Cree Nation, located in Treaty 6 territory, which we now call Saskatchewan, Canada. I grew up very humble and remote. I didn't have access to, urban living for a while, well into my 20s. So I definitely appreciate that calm style of living. It really created this beautiful narrative for me on what it is to be Indigenous and what it is to be an artist, because I think back to, living on the reserve, and it's people are so just back in the day when I used to live there, we didn't have a lot of social media, we didn't have a lot of cell phones. So it was like, you go visit your kukum, you go visit your aunties, and you spend a lot of time with your community, and, you go to all the local round dances and local powwows, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. And I think it's affected the way that I carry myself, because there is a part of me that forgets that the rest of the world isn't necessarily like that. So I think it's just, I try to carry that sense of community everywhere I go as well with my music. I try to create, like, we are just regular people, you and I, you know what I mean? And we do certain things, and
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Who was your inspiration growing up that got you thinking about a music career, and which musicians are helping you now on this journey?
I think growing up, I didn't really have a specific person in mind that I was like, okay, I want to do music because of this person. For me, music was always something that I did just to express myself, and I enjoyed it, so I kept it to myself. And I was always somewhat of a closet singer, I guess you could say. But I admired Amy Winehouse and Adele. Very much love that UK sound and still very much do. So I say that's kind of where I got a lot of my inspiration from. I've spoke a little bit about it before publicly and openly. I think now I don't necessarily look towards those very famous people. I think I look towards the people that are almost in the same area as me for inspiration, because I'm like, if you're working just as hard, like I can do it. You know, I have good friends. I've made good friends in the industry now, and I look to them. I look to them and I turn to them for motivation to keep going, for sure.
Well, that's great. And your music is already being featured in the film Nika and Madison, a film that we talked about on this show. Can you tell us when your album will be released and what listeners can expect?
Yeah, that was a very exciting opportunity. I was super happy about it. My album is probably going to be coming out early next year, which is Nehia Ways. That's what we like to call our New Year's. So for a new fresh start to the year, I'll be releasing my album. I was planning to release it at the end of 2025. However, I just decided that it'd be best to wait. So putting a little bit more energy into that when it is ready to be released to the world. I'm super excited. It's different. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised because, you know, Matriarch was so different from Mama, and then Relate was just, it has these different types of like rhythm and everything. And the next song that I'm doing, Sister Era, which is on Nika and Madison, is completely different, but at the same time, very unison with all the other songs. So it's really cool. I'm very excited, and yeah.
Finally, we got about 20 seconds left, Love. What's your words of advice for other young Indigenous artists out there who want to start singing but don't know where to start?
I think if you have the means, look into getting into some type of programming. If you are able and you have access, definitely look out for those structured programs that will help you understand, you know, music theory and the industry and all that type of stuff. Get a mentor, get somebody that is a couple steps ahead of you, that has the time to tell you, hey, this is what I think you should do, and self-practice every day, sing every day, practice every day, explore different genres, you know, really find your niche so that you know yourself.
Love Tatus, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best on your album, and we can't wait to listen to it in November.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Have a good day.
Some humble words of advice there, Love. And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday. Mino Puna Panil. Join me and the crew again at 6 p.m. Eastern. Until then, from all of us at APTN National News, Egasi, Kitom, Kawapamittinanaw.